Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of SDRescue. I am joined once again by Grayson Fulbright, my co-host and copywriter expert. And today we're going to be looking at an email, and I'm really excited for this because it's a topic that I've become very, very passionate about. But we're going to be looking at follow-ups. Grayson, you want to say anything about this email here? Short and sweet this week.
Yeah, this one's short and sweet. I think we'll be pretty focused when we review this, and the main topic I think we're going to be talking about is not only follow-ups, but how do you stay relevant in a cadence of touches that is going to span, 1, 2, 3 months, because it's not good enough to either stay irrelevant, or what a lot of salespeople fall into is nagging or trying to use manipulation to gain attention. So we'll kind of look into some traditional methods of follow-up and look at Austin's rewrite. He did the rewrite for this week, and we'll look at another way to try to gain attention in the middle of a cadence without coming off as desperate.
Yeah, perfect. I think that sums it up really well. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to make sure Grayson's going to look and make sure that this is indeed a Google Doc.
It is indeed a Google Doc.
All right, we're zoomed in at 150% for all the folks at home watching, and I'll read this to you. So, it says, "Hi Austin, I've tried to get a hold of you over the phone a few times now to talk about Nuarx Inc. becoming a partner with our company, but I haven't been able to reach you. I'm more than happy to communicate through email if that's what you would prefer. But if you would like to speak over the phone, don't hesitate to schedule a call with me." Okay. Orange and blue, our favorite colors. So I mean, for everyone watching at home, I mean, this is going to be really obvious, and this is kind of I will say this is kind of a lower tier example, right? I mean, there isn't a whole lot of skill involved in this, but my first instinct is like, this is the thing about follow-ups is we as salespeople are, whether it's a misnomer in ourselves because we put emotional energy into the leads or into the prospects and into prospecting, that we think there's more gravity behind the statements that we have. Or perhaps it's just poor copywriting. Just, they're just trying to write something for the sake of writing, and this sounded okay on paper. Like there's I don't know exactly what it was, but when you like giving me a call a couple times doesn't make your email have more weight behind it, right? That doesn't help your conversion probability. And I think that's that I would, a good safe practice as a rep who's prospecting, whether you're an SDR, an AE or whatever, or even an executive, your previous actions, unless they add value or give something, don't contribute, don't compound in aiding your conversion probability, right? That's the point I want to make here is just because you made 20 calls doesn't mean that I'm more likely to convert this time. I mean, if you look at it on paper, I'm sure that it actually does. Like, okay, yeah, I'm more likely to know who you are or whatever. But what I'm saying is that isn't pushing me towards conversion. That's pushing me towards response, perhaps. That's not helping me get to yes. And that's the issue I see with the email is I just don't see a lot that's getting me to yes here.
Yeah, I think this is a spillover of the problem that sales has had with essentially trying to automate as much as possible their sales touches and make it like this predictable system. That's what the SDR and BDR role kind of fell out of, was predictable revenue, right? This idea that you can actually do top of funnel prospecting and lead generation at scale in a way that you can build a whole program and a whole team of people around. But I think the problem is that when you do that, you have to be careful how far you go down the automation side of things. And you have to remember that it's still a one-to-one kind of communication. I mean, yes, it's an email. Yes, you're likely sending this with some automation software and probably sending to more than one person. Most people are, right? But you still have to make it to where it's actually going to be worth their time to read. And I think you made a beautiful point there, Austin, about like just sending something or just making a sales touch doesn't increase the likelihood that you're going to win the deal. In fact, more often than not, it's more likely you're going to do something wrong that pushes it backwards if you're all about the sales touch. And I think that, just to kind of recap my thoughts here, I think that's a problem from the sales industry, over focusing on the numbers, over focusing on activity levels, and not putting enough focus into what actually is the outcome that we're looking for each time we make a touch, and what do we do based on the outcome that happens after the touch. I think a lot of people forget about that, and that's why you tend to have these sequences to where it's like one, maybe two or three pretty well-written emails, and then everything else in the cadence tends to be some form of, hey, touching base, hey, following up, hey, checking in, hey, I haven't heard back from you. And I even see a lot of sales leaders, like people who are influential out in social, preaching this tactic. And I think what people have done is they've taken a tactic that you should use once, maybe twice in an entire cadence, and they're kind of just driving it. They're just like overusing it, and they're making it the entire cadence rather than just using it as a tactic.
Yeah, and so the other thing about this email here is that it's completely flawed in its logic. It says, hey, I'm more than happy to communicate through email if that's what you prefer, but if you would like to speak over the phone, don't hesitate to schedule a call with me. This salesperson is sending me an email assuming that it's the channel, the medium of communication that's the problem. No, that's not the problem. The problem is I don't have any reason to get on the phone with you or reply to this email. So I think that, like, and I get, now this one wasn't nested. It wasn't a in-thread reply. It was, this was just an email out of the blue, right? And what this person doesn't realize is that my office phone is 1,000 miles away from where I work every day, right? And that's not by design. That's just from COVID. But my desk phone is still sitting on my desk in my office building, a plane flight away, right? And so I don't even know that this person's called me. I haven't heard their voicemails. And I think that that's backwards, right? I think we think that, so I've heard a lot of good tactics from people where they actually use phone calls, and because phone call rates are so, like, it's still worth calling on the chance that you get someone to pick up and get a live conversation. But I've also heard that people are using voicemail to drive to email. And I think that's really smart. I think, instead of trying to get a call back, not happening a lot. But I think if you can use the voicemail or the voicemail transcriptions that come through on text messages as a way to drive people to email or reply to emails, like leaving a voicemail that says, hey, this is, hey, this is Austin and your spiel. But, part of it is going to be, hey, I just sent you an email. Go ahead and take a look at that or whatever, and have it be relevant. And so have the relevant pieces in your voicemail that generate the curiosity and demand to open your email and continue the conversation there. This person's doing it backwards. I think this is how it was done 10, 15 years ago, when phone was primary, when there was a lot more answers and a lot and people were on the phone more. But now I just think that the approach, right, to use phone and voicemail, use email and voicemail to drive calls back isn't an effective way to approach engagement. I don't think.
Yeah. To kind of go into one of the points or topics that you kind of brought up here, I think one stark difference between this email that we're reviewing and the rewrite that we're going to look at is how they actually position their journey with you as the recipient. And I like to tell people that when you're trying to get people's attention and say, hey, just a reminder, like, pay attention to me, I'm in your inbox, you want to show your work. You don't want to complain. You don't want to make it all about you or make it like a sob story. Just show your work. Show buyers that you are an elite level, very professional salesperson that is okay with rejection and gets that it's normal and is still hunting for that conversation. And I think if we kind of look at these different elements of the email, the way that it's framed is not showing their work. It's not trying to say, hey, I've given you some calls and I am trying again. and I'm willing to communicate however you'd like to, it doesn't come off as that. It comes off very almost like they're talking to themselves, where it's like, hey, tried to get a hold of you, couldn't do it, haven't been able to reach you. If you want to reach me here, that's fine. If you'd rather reach me here, that's fine. And the perspective that they're kind of like leaving the next steps on the table for the buyer to stand up and raise their hand and say, ooh, I'll do it. It's not as motivating. It's not going to motivate responses if you're not acting like you're excited and you're willing to do the work to get in a conversation. And so when you're doing follow-ups, I tend to always lean on being very direct and having a very clear, relevant reason in the intro for why they should read it. I would say, I'm following up because, I'm following up about, or I'm following up with, if you have some info or some news that you want to share. But if you do it that way, like, one, they're going to recognize you. Two, they're going to see that you're following up. You've shown your work. But three, if you keep things relevant and you don't focus on the emotional, unprofessional, yada, yada that goes on in cold prospecting, you're going to get better responses and more responses from buyers. I can say that just me personally, both as someone who's gone through a sales process and somebody who is a seller and manages people through a sales process, it's no fun to deal with a seller that just can't take no for an answer. And this email to me is kind of like a physical representation of a salesperson that is either through inexperience or through cockiness, they're just almost unwilling to accept that the prospect might not be interested.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you touched on something really interesting there, where the onus is put on me as if, they're trying to prize themselves. Like, hey, look, you have to chase me. Like, hey, you can schedule a call with me, or hey, you can reply here through an email. I'm like, dude, you're the one reaching out to me. Like, whoever this person is, like, misunderstands where the leverage lies. They're writing emails as if I should be chasing them, and I'm trying to get what they have or sell them. And that's just not the case, right? Like, there could not be a less compelling email in my inbox than this one. Like that, and I say that not because it's poorly written, just because there's nothing in it compelling, right? At least the other ones, like the other really poor ones where it's like, hey, we do this service. Do you want it? Or our service, or we're this company that does X, Y, Z. I mean, at least there's something that, like, you have a very small chance that I want that service right now, but there's a chance, right? Like, there's at least something there that might be compelling. In this, it's nothing. I would expect, like, this is as if, like, my boss sent me an email and said, hey, Austin, you need to call me or send an email. Right? Like,
right.
You know what I mean? It's just, there's just such a weird dynamic in this email where it's such a gross misunderstanding of the interpersonal dynamics between the prospect and the seller here. But
yeah. And I think
that's what I want to say about it.
Just one last point to make. I think when you're looking at trying to, like, connect with someone in an inbox, you have to be really careful about, actually, I just lost my train of thought, Austin. Let's go ahead and,
it's all good. We can
move
move
on
to the next
rewrite.
one.
That's okay.
It's late in Vietnam, friends. It's almost tomorrow.
It is almost midnight my time, and here I am.
All right, so we can go to the rewrite. So I try to keep it short as well, but I think it's a different philosophy than a lot of, and I think maybe either next week or the next time I rewrite, we can talk about it outside of this call. But I think we can touch on, we've touched on a lot about assumptions and other things like that in cold prospecting emails. I would love to hit up some follow-ups because I've got a long chain of them that I think we could really dissect, and actually we could change the narrative a lot in how sales people are following up. So anyway, here's the rewrite, and there's a big difference in philosophy. Hey, Austin, sorry we missed each other on the phone. Remember, I have no idea this person's called. So anyway, I just put that in there. I spoke with this employee in your company, and they thought that partnering with our company could increase your average deal size and differentiate you in competitive deals. Would you be open to exploring this further? Okay, so kept it short, and I even put in a line about the phone just to mirror the email above. You don't have to send that message, but I will say this, that on the off chance that this person's desk phone isn't 1,000 miles away and they've seen you call several times, this email could help them pick up the phone the next time, right? Because if you've called a lot, you'll probably call again. And the reason why I put that in there is because in the second line, it says, I spoke with this employee and the things that, we talked about. So that next time, if you've seen my number or, a lot, I'll come across your phone, whether it's your cell phone or your desk phone, I don't know. At least now you have context for why I'm calling you a lot. It's because I talked to somebody in your company. And they said that there's a good reason that you're the person to talk to, and that there's a valuable reason that we should have a conversation that's very relevant to what you're doing. So that's why I left that phone thing in there, just because I think it might even be good to say, hey, sorry, we've missed each other on the phone a couple of times or something, just so people know, oh, that one number that's called me 4 times. Because the next time you call, they might pick it up if they don't reply to this email. Anyway, that was my thought. But
yeah, I think kind of regardless of the copy itself, I think the structure you used is a good best practice, which, like, regardless of how you intro it, it's generally good to have some form of either new information or event or revelation that kind of makes the follow-up relevant, because otherwise you're just kind of left following up for the sake of following up. So I love your sentence that you put in there, that, like, you could have just followed up with that sentence and they would open it and read it. That's relevant, right? I spoke with this person's name that's at your company that you should know, and they thought this. Like, regardless of what the conversation is about, regardless of what your brand is or who you are, if I get an email from anyone that says, hey, I spoke with one of your team members and they said this, well, like, I'm semi-accountable to some of those team members, so I'm going to go hop in and see what it is, right? And so that's a way to kind of bring them and draw them into the conversation without you having to leverage manipulative kind of like emotional, psychological things where it's like, oh, like you missed my call and I tried to call you several times and I haven't been able to get a hold of you. Instead, you go in, you're very direct, you state the situation. Hey, sorry that we haven't been able to connect. Period. No blame assigned. And then boom, getting right to the meat, getting right to something relevant that they can hang on to and think about. So I think overall, that's a really good approach. And just to kind of add to it, well done, adding in kind of like my favorite way to use this phrase, like I spoke with blank and they said blank, is to use vision states and say, hey, I spoke with this team member and they thought that you could get A and B out of our product. And I just wanted to check to see if you agree with that. I think that's a really powerful angle and great leverage that you can use throughout the deal.
Yeah. And look, and I think that this is what the reason that this email is so philosophically different is because I like to see sales engagement tools as a tool to make the salesperson better and enhance what the salesperson can do. But unfortunately, what I think's happened is that the sales engagement tool has become the salesperson, and we now just have a silent operator. And guess what? That's not the case, right? The salespeople who are winning work through people the best. That's the ones in our company, at least. Our top performers are people who work through people. And so what I just think that if you can get a conversation with anybody, even individual contributors on the decision maker's team, which should be compared to a decision maker, very easy to reach. I just don't understand why we have follow-up emails. It's follow-up emails for the sake of showing numbers and accruing numbers in a CRM or sales engagement platform, or because the management is looking at leads that don't get touched within a certain time frame. You know what I mean? Like, all of these reasons that drive emails like the one above. Like, this is a bigger philosophical conversation, and I don't want to make it into that. I do want to keep this tactical and focused. But like, if you are sending a follow-up email because the date of expiration is coming up in your CRM, or your manager told you need to send more emails, or you need to follow more frequently, or you need more activity. If it's anything hollow or self-centered, or for you as the seller or seller organization, you've got to don't send an email. Like, you need to go do more work to go and build something relevant to send in there. Go make a case study, go get a customer on a Zoom call and record it. Go and go and do a survey of 100 prospects or 100 customers, go and call somebody on their team and talk to them about what their company is doing or about problems they have or about anything that's going on. Something. You've got to do something buyer centric. And I think that's where the switch needs to flip. And that goes for every prospecting email, not just follow-ups, but it's especially egregious in follow-ups because some people can do prospecting emails right and hit on problems. But in the follow-ups, I see it the most blatant where it's just like, hi, I'm here, or the emoji. Hey, just wanted to bring this to the top of your inbox. Oh, every time. And I cringe. Anyway.
Yeah. I definitely agree that B2B, the space as a whole, marketing and sales really needs to get better about not only identifying and understanding who you're selling to. Like that's one thing. That's easy. That's traditional. That's in the past. People did that in the past. But how do you do that in a fast-paced information era where things change on a dime? Events can cause crowds of people to take action in an instant. We're just in such a digitally empowered environment that it's not good enough to simply say, ooh, this is who my buyer is. Ooh, this is who my buyer looked like when we did our little ICP exercise 2 years ago. You have to constantly be gathering information about how your buyers are evolving and how your space is changing. And one of the best ways to do that is through these prospecting touches that you send to top of funnel prospects. I think people miss that. And I remember the point that I was going to bring up earlier, and it is kind of relevant to this. But when people send follow-ups, I feel like one thing that a lot of sellers miss is recognizing the reality that buyers live in. I think a lot of people do their sequences in a vacuum to where they're like, like Mr. Austin Fuller, I'm going to put him in this sequence and I'm going to send you 8 emails and I'm the only email in your inbox and I'm going to get you. When in reality, if you get the average, like forget about buyer or decision maker, just like random professional, if you get your average random professional's inbox, there's probably 100 follow-up emails that look just like this. And not only your direct competitors. This is where I think people really make mistakes with follow-ups. But when you make follow-ups generic, you're not only having to compete against people that actually sell in your space, you're having to compete against everybody that sends that buyer an email. Whether it's a newsletter, whether it's a coach, whether it's a software as a service, whether it's their mom, whether it's a team member, like the more generic that your emails are, the easier it is for them to blend in. And so I think to kind of tie back around tactically to what you've written here, I think, yes, an argument could be made that maybe the first line is generic, but then you immediately get into some valuable stuff that I bet no other email in their inbox that day has. Like there's probably no other emails out there that said, hey, I spoke with this person. And I think that's what salespeople really need to recognize is that you're not just sending an email to a person who's waiting for your email. You are sending an email and there's probably 100 other people out there in the world also sending emails to that person. And you've got to figure out how to be the one that they open and the one that they respond to. So props, I think, in terms of how you handled this, because I think this follow-up would actually catch attention.
The other thing about this is that there might be 100 other sales emails sending generic follow-ups, but you're also not taking into account the 150 additional internal emails. And so that's one, right? Those are the ones I prioritize. When I get emails in my inbox, I look and see, is it internal? Because so in ours, so we're a cybersecurity company, so we have a lot of anti-phishing stuff. Any email that doesn't come in from our email domain is labeled external. Your subject line, it gets a big all caps external across it. I already know you're a vendor. All right, so now you have to get through that. No matter what you put in your subject line, it's going to be external and then your subject line. And then it says in the body, whatever your body is, forget it. We shunt it down and we put this email originated from outside the company. Do not click any links in this, right? Sort of spiel to stop people from clicking bad links. So your pretty HTML emails get kicked in the face by this one because big text breaks up all of those pictures and stuff. It gets dropped in line a lot of times. But anyway, my point is that I'm always going to reply to the internal ones first. And so one of the tricks, the reason, I don't want to call it a trick, one of the reasons that this works is because it looks and reads like an internal email. Now, the sorry we miss each other on the phone doesn't. You could get rid of that entirely, but I spoke with this person I could have an email with that in my preview from somebody in my company or somebody outside, right? I spoke with somebody on your team. I spoke with somebody on your team, or I spoke with this person in the company. Anybody in the company could send that message as well as anybody outside. So that's part of the it's not a tactic or a trick, right? I'm not trying to be disingenuous and fool them into thinking, I'm actually not outside. I'm not actually in your company. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that the reason this email, I think, gets more responses is because it acts like emails that you already respond to, right? Decision makers in B2B companies respond and have conversations with people in their companies from people that have talked to people on their team or about things that are moving in their departments, right? That's what they do. They reply to those emails and they schedule calls and meetings around those emails. So that's kind of the philosophy, right? Is if you can send it, you have to go and do the work, right? You can't just say you talked to Jan or Dave and not actually have talked to them. You're going to have to go talk to them. But if you can go and do that extra work to get yourself an email that is very similar to the other emails they have internally, and they're going to be more likely to reply because it's in line with what they're already doing. So anyway, that's all I've got to talk about it. I mean, we're almost at the top of the hour. This was a good ride.
Yeah, this was a pretty good ride. I think overall, to kind of recap, I would say when you're doing follow-ups, just try your best to add value in every email. I was taught that near the beginning of my email copywriting journey, and that's helped a lot because not only will you learn how to edit out things that aren't as valuable, but in the case of this original email that we looked at today, it becomes glaringly obvious when you're writing an email that has nothing to add, when it's just fluff. So just always focus on trying to find something valuable to add in the email. And to kind of close out, Austin, I think you made a really good point there about, doing the work to actually get some sort of substantive like relevancy to present. And I think there's something to be said too of like actually building off of momentum versus creating momentum from scratch. I use this all the time. And I use this exact method actually, where it's like, if you can go talk to the right people, you can build a story to present to one decision maker that creates the illusion that a conversation is already happening. They don't have to be 100% sold. They don't have to be 100% interested. But if a decision maker sees that you're already talking with some of the stakeholders in the deal, they're gonna find you relevant, and they're gonna figure out why you're talking to their team members. So I would say like add value, paint a story with your follow-ups, and please send different emails. Don't send the same thing 8 times over the course of 2 months.
That's a good one. I think, I think that the idea of following up on a previous email, I think is a huge misconception, right? That you should try and get people re-interested in an old email you sent. There is a chance that they missed it, but I think that more often than not, it just wasn't compelling enough, and you should try and find something else compelling, bring something new. And I think that approach has a lot, is much more effective than trying to reignite, unless you're absolutely certain, right? I mean, where you've talked to you have some insider info, it's relevant, it's powerful, and you can bring that back up, then you can probably recycle it once, where it can be like, hey, did you see this? This is really, look at this thing, right? This is a very relevant thing. But very rarely do you have something that relevant, right? I've done this a long time. I mean, to get that kind of info, you've got to you got to have like somebody that was your best buddy customer and leave to a new company, and like he just tell you all the good stuff, right? Because buyers aren't normally that forthcoming. But you make a really great point to bring something new up every time to gain interest. That's how you should follow up, in my opinion. I think that's right. Let's see. We're about to sign off. So let's see. If you want more of this content, we do this every week, 11:30 Eastern time. Send us your cold emails. We will love to evaluate them and rewrite them. I mean, Grayson charges really good money for that. So, I mean, it's really awesome for him to do that. For anybody that watches the show, for anybody who's a fan of SD Revolution. Go to SD Rev's website, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because this will be recorded. The recording will be posted there for you to view. put a like up there for us, and connect with us on LinkedIn, so that we can get your emails and we can discourse. We also have a Slack group. We chop it up in there all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely connect with us, and join us next week. We'll be doing this every Monday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And like Austin said, please send us your emails. It doesn't have to be yours. It could be ones that you find in your inbox. It could be ones that maybe team members share. But we are looking for new copy to check out and rewrite.
And we'll keep it anonymous, just like we do on the show. We're not going to roast anybody, right? We're not here to put anybody on blast. We're not here to shame anyone. We just want to write better emails and get you guys more money, more deals, more pipe. We love pipeline. So we'll catch you next week, everyone.